Welcome to Transcendent. I'm Joe, and I'm the dad.
And I'm Raya, and I'm the daughter.
Hey, I just had my first meeting of the Assumption Club.
The Assumption Club?
Yes. I thought it was really interesting. I walked in there and sat down, and the president got up and he said, I think we know why we're all here.
We are dedicated to preserving family relationships. But how do you have a difficult conversation when things get hard?
I'm not sure, but I think we'll find out.
Yes. When you're not seeing eye to eye, what kind of tools and resources are there? Well, I remembered a resource that was given to me by an old friend. She's unfortunately no longer with us, Catherine Jeffers. Catherine, I would consider to be one of my best mentors in terms of, and yours as well, in terms of business kinds of things, and especially business communications. In fact, the very first time I met her, I was riding back down to university where she was going to be teaching a course at the university on business communication. So I learned a lot from her, and she recommended a book called Crucial Conversations. I read this book probably 15 or 20 years ago, and it stuck with me for a very long time. And I thought it's probably worth pulling out a few of the points from that because it can be relevant in a lot of the things that we are talking about here on this podcast.
I'll give you an example of the kind of thing she was able to do with the way she was able to converse with people. She told me a story that she was actually invited to do a presentation in Congress. She said someone called her up and asked her to be there to make her presentation. And they said, the Vice President of the United States is going to be there, and so is the chairman of the Finance Committee. He said, it'll do a lot for you. It'll give you a lot of credibility to be able to do that. Of course, there won't be any compensation for it, but you will have that amount of credibility that will really help you a lot in your business. And she said, is the Vice President going to be paid for that day? And he said, yes, he is. And she said, and is the chairman of the Finance Committee going to be paid for that day? He said, yes. And she says, well, I expect to be paid for that day too. And I thought that was so smart of her to do that. And she did end up getting a pretty nice sum for it.
And I'm sure from remembering how she was, that was not remotely rude or difficult in any way, but she would clearly state what she wanted and would not back down, but was very respectful all the time.
Absolutely.
I remember learning from her one time. I was in a business arrangement with somebody. I did not have a contract, but we did have a verbal agreement. And I needed to be let out of this verbal agreement. And I said, if I come back to this guy and I tell him what leverage I have over him, that, I could do this or I could do that, would that be helpful? And she reminded me, no, you want something from this guy. You want him to release you from your business obligation. Why would you ever want to say anything that's remotely threatening to him? You want to be as nice as possible as you can to this guy. And I thought, oh, it's obvious when she says it.
Yes.
But until you hear it and think about it, you don't always know. And these principles here that we're talking about from this book, Crucial Conversations, have a lot to do with that. How do we have these difficult conversations with the people that matter the most to us? Because oftentimes we feel like I can't have any conversation that matters because I would wreck my relationship. And so we find ourselves avoiding until things blow up. And the very thing that we were trying to avoid, we actually made way worse.
That's correct. And part of it is choosing the correct language, choosing the correct words, and choosing the correct approach. And whether that's the tone you're using or whether it is the situation, the setup that you have, those things matter.
We're going to give some hypothetical situations here. The first one is college student Janice. She's 22. She's transgender. She has been presenting mail to her parents, David and Susan. She's really worried about them. When she comes home over winter break, she wants to come out to them, but she's really worried because David and Susan have made some transphobic comments in the past about men in women's bathrooms or men playing women's sports. She loves her mom and dad, but she's terrified of losing them. She can't keep living a double life. What can she do?
The second hypothetical situation is Alex. He's a 16-year-old high school junior, and his father, Jordan, has noticed several signs that Alex is probably gay. He has pride flags in the room. He has secretive texting. He mentions his friend named Sam, who seems very important to him. When Jordan gently asks about Alex's social life or dating, Alex just shuts down. He gets angry or he changes the subject. Jordan wants to be supportive, but he feels shut out. And Alex seems increasingly withdrawn and stressed. What's he going to do?
And then our third hypothetical is with a parent, Riley, who has a child, Casey, who is non-binary, uses they, them pronouns. Most of the family has adapted really well to Casey. Has no problem with them except for Grandpa Frank. Now, Grandpa Frank is one of these ornery old cusses that he just says, I'm not going to play these pronoun games. Has no problem saying that right in front of Casey. Now, Riley is furious, wants to support her child, but she doesn't want to cut off her relationship with Grandpa either. What does she do? Now, let's take a look at the wisdom that this book gives us. I never mentioned the authors of this book because there's 5 of them, but I'll read them now. It's Joseph Grenny, Carrie Patterson, Ron McMillan, Al Switzler, and Emily Gregory. And they are researchers in social sciences. They've looked at a lot of the research that has been done and put out there about what makes conversations work and how people can get past these high-stakes conversations and still keep their relationship strong. One of the very first things that they suggest that you do when you're getting ready to have that conversation is they call it start with heart.
The person who wants to have the difficult conversation is the person who should ask first, what do I really want? And in most cases, I'm going to guess that it's probably peace and getting along and acceptance and those kinds of things, what they want. They want for both sides to be able to reconcile or accept or become an ally or become affirming. That's what they really want. They want the people that they need to speak with to have full acceptance of them. That's what I think they want.
They give a story in the book talking about 2 daughters. I think it's one of the authors has 2 daughters. They're out on a vacation. They get back. And they've been out all day. They really have to go to the bathroom. And the 2 daughters are sitting there arguing about who gets to use the bathroom first. And it was really just a matter of a 2-minute thing. And then the other one would be able to get to go. But instead, they argued for 25 minutes about which one was going to get to use that bathroom. And too often, we lose sight of what it is that we really want. And we get involved in an argument that we never intended to have. We're not going to get anything from it. We're not going to win it at all. Boy, Dad, I remember listening to some cassette tapes that you gave me way back in the 80s about negotiation.
Yes.
And that power negotiator talked about always remember what it is that you want. He told the story of some negotiators going in, and he knew what they wanted. They went in, then they brought the offer in, and the other people at the table said, we can't believe you gave us such a terrible offer. This is terrible. We would never agree to come up with anything lower than 90% of what we originally brought. And then they stormed out. And his friends turned to him and said, that was terrible. What a horrible thing. He said, are you kidding? They just came down 10%.
Yeah.
You keep your eye on the ball. When you play sports, they always talk about you keep your eye on the ball.
Yes.
And the same thing here. You remember what it is that you want, which means that you reject what they call a sucker choice. We can get into these either or thinking kind of patterns.
Well, if I remember the sucker choice, there's two choices. Either you're going to be thinking this way or that way. Those are the two options that people who want to solve it say. Look, either you're going to not have this at all, or we're going to do it my way. That's their sucker's choice. In reality, the third choice is actually introducing maybe there's another way. Maybe it's not all your way or the highway, or it's not at all. Maybe there is something in between. We need to look at the third choice.
Right. Oftentimes, this will play out with the person that says, well, okay, I need to either let this go completely, or if I bring this up at all, I will appear to be a jerk. And I don't want to be a jerk. So instead, I'm going to just let it go. Well, that is a sucker's choice. Are you saying that there is no way in the world that you can have this conversation and not possibly have it go well? We want to find that way to have it go well and reject that. So let's think about hypotheticals here. We talked about Janice. For Janice, she's thinking either I tell them and I lose them, or I hide forever, I never come out to them, and I lose myself.
That is the sucker's choice.
That is exactly the sucker's choice. What does she really want?
Well, what she really wants is she wants what we spoke about earlier. She wants to be able to reconcile with them, even though she hasn't presented the problem yet. She wants to reconcile with them, and she wants life to go on as Janice, not as her dead name.
Right. She wants to be her authentic self. She wants to be her authentic self with her parents. She wants to make sure that she has safety. She wants to know that that love continues in the acceptance. Absolutely. And then what she wants for them, of course, she just wants them to understand. She wants them to grow. She wants them to continue to have that family bond with her as well.
Exactly.
What about Jordan?
Jordan was the father, and he was the one that could clearly see that his son Alex was struggling by himself, but hadn't come out yet. He wasn't out, and he wasn't sure he was going to come out. He didn't want to have that conversation with his dad. That's where Jordan was, and that's where Alex was.
You can imagine how Jordan is feeling as the father. Either I'm going to push my son and damage our relationship, or I stay silent and Alex continues struggling alone. Well, that's a sucker's choice.
Yes.
I don't want that. No parent wants that for their child. And that is so often, if you're a parent, you know you have encountered these sucker's choices all the time. They come up all the time.
Of course they do. What Jordan wants, he wants Alex to feel safe and supported, and he wants honest communication. That's what he wants. He wants Alex to communicate with him. He wants Alex to tell him what he already knows, but he doesn't want to approach it with him because he's not certain that he can have Alex open up about it.
And of course, what he wants is the best for Alex. He wants Alex to be able to live his most authentic life. He wants Alex to know that he's loved unconditionally as well.
And that he has the confidence then to be able to come to his father and say that.
Let's talk about the third one. Remember, this is the grandfather. So this is Riley with her grandfather,
Yes.
Grandpa Frank,
Yep.
the angry old cuss.
Exactly. And Riley's sucker choice is either I protect Casey by cutting off Grandpa, or I preserve the family peace by tolerating harm. By the way, I always said cranky old men were cranky young men. And it's generally true.
I feel like it amplifies who you were.
Of course it does.
You're kind of cranky as a young man, and then you get older and you say, you know what, not gonna let people tell me who to be anymore, and you get even crankier.
Yes, and you become Krusty the Clown.
And so what Riley wants is to preserve Casey's dignity and safety, but she also wants family harmony as much as is possible. And what she's really wanting for her father is to have him grow and understand that the world is not how it used to be. And she wants to make sure that he can keep his relationship with his grandchild as well, which she's seeing is being really hurt by all of this.
So we've got these three situations here. How do we deal with these situations? What are we going to do? We'll tell you a little bit more about that right after the break.
Hi, I'm Andy Barrett, a Lutheran pastor and a supporter of this podcast. I see Transcendent as a ministry. I've pointed many people toward these recorded conversations full of so much heart and care and warmth, as well as some of Joe's jokes, which are hands down the worst part of this podcast. But even they make me smile. I'm one of the many genuinely blessed by Transcendent, and I encourage you to join me in supporting this podcast by giving as little as $3 a month. Go to transcendent.com and click support.
There are so many tools in this book that are useful for helping you have positive conversations with people. There is no way we can possibly get to all of them. So we're just going to pull out a few of the pieces that we especially like. And the next one that we're going to talk about that is most useful as you're starting a conversation that you think is going to be difficult is to establish mutual purpose and mutual respect. The reason why that is so important is really going back to the way that our brains work. And I've done some research into some of this. I'm by no means, an expert in all of this, but I do know that our brains have different parts, and our most fundamental part is called the amygdala. It's the part of our brain that sometimes you'll hear it called the lizard brain.
I don't know how to break this to you, but I never called mine that.
What the amygdala's job is to keep you safe, to keep you fed, and to make sure that you reproduce. So it's our most primal instincts. And when it comes to anything involving conflict, anytime you feel like you're even remotely threatened, you get into that, we call it the fight or flight mode of either I need to lash out because I'm worried about how things are going to be, or if I'm not going to lash out at you, I'm going to run away. And as soon as that part of our brain gets triggered, it is exceptionally difficult because of the way that we're wired in order to continue surviving, that all of our rationality goes out the window at that point.
Yes, that's true. And you can't seem to control your responses. You want to face them and say, look, you don't know what you're talking about.
Right. You no longer can have that, that rationality that we rely on so often, because when you get into that place of feeling defensive, it's very difficult, and I'm just thinking through, they talk about speak the truth in love. And so often people turn that into speak the truth as harsh as you can, but tell yourself that you're doing it out of the purpose of love. Well, that doesn't help at all. What we need to do is make sure that when we're approaching to have a difficult conversation, we don't want that person to get their defenses up, and we don't want to get into the place for ourselves where we get our defenses up. We want to make sure that they know and that we know that we're on the same team here. I respect you as a person, and I want what's best for you, and you want what's best for me. So we can start by remembering what it is that we want, like we talked about before the break. And then we communicate that, we figure out what the other person wants, and we find our mutual purpose together. Because very rarely do you want the exact opposite from what I want, unless we're sitting down playing a game. The reality is you maybe want something that appears to be at odds with what I want. But when I really think about what you want, and when I really think about what I want, underneath the surface issue, they're probably very different, and there's a compromise in there.
Well, that's the whole secret. You get away from the sucker's choice and you move toward the compromise by setting it up as a safe conversation.
I have done this ever since I read this book, and I think I've become really good at having many difficult conversations. There's still some that I miss these pieces or have problems, but in general, I feel like I've avoided a lot of conflict because when I get into communication with somebody and I think things are going to be difficult, I immediately go to, hey, I want to make sure that you know that I respect you as a person. It has helped me in sales. It has helped me with my children. It has helped me at the grocery store. I mean, just anything in life. I have heard some people say, I don't respect people unless they're worthy of respect. Well, I have to say that's stupid. Because what is that going to get you? If you don't respect somebody, all that you lose out on is them treating you well. Maybe they are not worthy of your respect, but what do you lose by showing them respect? I can't think of a single person that I do not show respect to when I'm with them in real life. And consequently, when I have difficult situations, I always go back to that place. Hey, I want you to know, you and I might be at odds on this specific thing, but I think you're a great person. I think that you're trying to do what's right. And let's see if we can find our mutual purpose together. So let's talk about our hypothetical situations. We've got Janice, who wants to come out to her parents. What is their mutual purpose for her and her parents?
Her mutual purpose is to establish an honest, open, and safe relationship for all of them.
Her parents don't want the relationship to break down.
No.
And she doesn't want the relationship to break down.
Exactly.
So that's a great place to start with the conversation. Mom and Dad, I have something that's going to be difficult to share with you here, but I want to start with the idea that I want our relationship to be as strong as it possibly can. I don't want to do anything that I would ever threaten or hurt that. And then to establish that mutual respect, to remind them, I'm not here trying to hurt you, and I think that you have been a great mom and dad to me. Remind them of the things that they've done well, or the things that, where she really respects them because she should.
Just like Jordan should say to Alex, something like that. I'm so proud of you and all that you have done, and you are such a whiz in math, or wow, you sure can play that guitar, whatever it happens to be, throw in a few compliments, etc. Let them know that you really are proud of them and sincere, and establish it that way. And there are things that I noticed, and go on from there. You point out the fact that obviously you wouldn't put up that pride flag if it didn't mean something to you.
Right.
That
Right.
kind of thing. And you move forward from there.
And maybe just an acknowledgement that our mutual purpose together is that I love you. I want what's best for you in every situation. I want you to know that there is nothing that you could ever do or say or be. There is nothing that would ever put you outside of my love for you as a parent.
Exactly. He wants honest communication, and so does Alex. That's what they want, honest communication between the two of them.
But if Alex is shutting down, why do you think Alex is shutting down?
Because he's not certain how Jordan is going to accept it.
Right. something is feeling at risk. It's feeling scary. And if Jordan really wants to make sure he keeps that relationship, it starts by making sure that they know there's that mutual purpose, the mutual love, the mutual respect.
Yeah.
Well, what about this difficult situation with Grandpa Frank?
Yeah. The cranky old grandpa.
Yeah, what do we do with that one?
It is the mom that is in the middle. She has to get away from the sucker's choice and move to a third choice that is acceptable to everyone.
Right. Now, I'm sure I can imagine Grandpa Frank probably immersed in watching news programs that are reminding him all the time of how terrible the world is getting and how they're transing our kids and, whatever things that he's been listening to. So you start and you find that shared purpose. Even the people that have consumed all of this negative information on the news still are embracing all of that because they want what's best. They're wanting a world in which they can protect their children. And so you come and you say, or Riley can come and say to Grandpa Frank, you know what, Grandpa or Dad? If it's like me, I call you Grandpa even when the kids are not around.
Yeah.
You know what, Grandpa? We all want what's best for Casey, and we want Casey to know that they're loved and they belong in this family. You want that, and I want that as well.
Exactly.
So let's see if we can have a conversation that keeps that at the forefront. What's a way that we can all work on this together? Now, this is a hard one. I mean, he's one of these tough cases. But I think if we remind him what matters to him and what's important to him, then we can begin to have that real conversation.
Everybody wants Grandpa to have a positive relationship with Casey, and they all want family harmony. That's what they really want. And the way to get it is to come to a mutual acceptance.
None of these things are easy. These are difficult situations, all three of them, particularly that third one. We're going to continue talking about some tools and things that you can use in order to help your relationships be stronger as we go forward. We're going to leave it right there for now. Think about your relationships. Who in your life do you need to go back to and recommunicate your respect for them and your mutual purpose? Who do you need to remind that you love them because they're feeling like maybe the relationship is feeling a little threatened? And if we can all find one place where we can strengthen those relationships just a little bit, that's going to help us to have the real kind of relationships that we want in our lives.
That's right. A good takeaway here is to remember, start out by making it safe. That's really critical. Let the other person know that you want what's best for everyone. You want something that is a safe place for all of you to have a safe conversation. When you lay that groundwork, you are on the right track to have that difficult situation and that difficult conversation to help to solve these problems.
But one thing that will never be a difficult conversation is this podcast. Bit of a reach? Yeah, maybe that one was.
Wow, I wouldn't have thought that for sure. Wow.
We're grateful to have you coming back here week after week as we're giving you tools and resources that you can use to help be a good ally and to keep your relationship strong.
And with that, we'll see you Monday. Well, here is a situation where it's the dad who is in the kind of in the middle in this one.
We made her the mom, Riley.
That's right.
It didn't specify in here, but we figured, I don't know, I just picked one.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.